When we spoke on the phone, and when we were in Santa Fe before you, we're talking about the A.Q. Khan story. And we know that A.Q. Khan was behind Pakistan's ability to develop the bomb, but it goes way beyond Pakistan. So why don't you tell us about that?
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you all for coming. This is a subject that I'm passionate about, and hopefully you will be too at the end of this evening. I have to tell you, the truth is that after this recent presidential election, I've been on a self-imposed news blackout. I just needed to detox. It was so ugly out there. And I have spent the time thinking about how am I going to re-engage? Where do I affect positive change? What do I do? And I've come back to this issue. One, I think I may have some value added to it. But particularly because this president is so unpredictable, his public comments to date on the nuclear issue have been so casual, confounding, confusing. So I think this is the time, and this is where I'm going to put my efforts. I'm a former covert CIA operations officer. My expertise was in nuclear counterproliferation. Essentially, that means making sure that people from rogue nation states to terrorists to black marketeers do not get the nuclear capability. The story I want to tell you tonight is about a man and his network who I think you can arguably say that without him, we really wouldn't be worrying quite so much about the Iranian or the North Korean nuclear programs. It's not a stretch to say that he changed the history of the world, and not in a good way. His name is A.Q. Khan, and I was deeply involved in the operation to bring down his network. You may know a little bit about him. There was a lot in the media about A.Q. Khan, but the story I'm going to tell you tonight goes a little bit further, because like every human being, he wasn't just this diabolical evil genius that we heard about. He was also a very good husband, father, very generous friend, complex. So let me tell you a little bit about the story and then the CIA aspect and how we brought him down. He was born in 1939 in Bhopal, India. He was one of 7 children. His father was a very modest school teacher, and he was devout. He was respectful, very good student. And after World War II, when the British Empire was contracting its colonial obligations, they decided to partition off India, Hindu, and make a Muslim area, Pakistan. And that started one of the great migrations of history of people going in 2 different directions. Over 10 million people. This partition happened in 1947. So Khan and his whole family went from India to Muslim Pakistan in 1952. He went to college there. He graduated in 1960 with a degree in metallurgical engineering. And shortly thereafter, he went to Germany to further his studies. And then he went to Belgium to complete his doctorate in metallurgical engineering. After he got his doctorate, he moved to Amsterdam and he started working for a company that designed ultra centrifuges. And these are rapidly spinning tubes used to separate and concentrate certain isotopes and gasified uranium to produce enriched uranium. This is the fissile material in a nuclear device. So Khan was quite a friendly and model employee. Everyone liked him. He settled in. He had married a Dutch woman. They had 2 small girls. But his world changed, and subsequently our world changed, in 1971, when Pakistan was humiliatingly defeated by India. It was very rapid, and it was pretty complete. Prime Minister Bhutto came to power, strong man. And about a month after the defeat of Pakistan's defeat, he called together 70 of Pakistan's top scientists and said, we're going to build a nuclear bomb. Because they perceived India as, in their eyes, an existential threat. So Khan, who's still working back in the Netherlands, realizes, well, maybe I can help out. And he wrote Bhutto a letter presenting his credentials and saying, how can I help? He's volunteering. And so Khan gets to work. He starts roaming the halls of this secret and yet somewhat open company. They have an alliance with something called Urenco, which was a European consortium that designed centrifuges and was involved in that whole nuclear sphere. And he starts taking notes in Urdu. And I'm guessing the Dutch speak a lot of languages. I'm guessing Urdu might not be one of them. So he's taking notes, he's talking to people, and his activities are raising eyebrows, but no one really says anything. Finally, in 1975, Khan takes his family and they relocate back to Pakistan. And he begins buying technology bits and pieces from Western suppliers, using front companies, false end-user certificates, third country designates to obscure their intended use. Where is this sanctioned technology going? He was paying, though, 2 or 3 times the going rate, so he really didn't have that much trouble getting what he needed. He founded a laboratory called the Engineering Research Laboratories in 1976. He hired over 10,000 people. And by 1982, they achieved the first weapons-grade uranium. In 1984, they had enough fissile material for several nuclear bombs. He was given carte blanche. So as his renown grew, so did his arrogance. He was really, accountable to no one except the Prime Minister. He already had significant arrogance that got even bigger and developed a need for power and recognition. Then in the 1990s, export controls on these sort of nuclear widgets began to tighten a little bit. So he had to go further and further afield to keep the business going. And that's when he started his global procurement efforts. And while this is happening, he is being showered with awards, medals. He is being held up as the savior of Pakistan because of what he's working on. Then in May 1998, India explodes 5 nuclear weapons. I remember, I happened to be in Vienna at the time. Later in that month of May 98, Pakistan answers this provocation with 5 of their own tests. It was called the Islamic bomb. And this really was for Khan the apogee of what he had tried to achieve all along, that he was the savior of Pakistan. I want to jump ahead now to where the CIA starts getting involved. The truth is, by the 1990s, the Khan research labs were sending salesmen all over the world. They were exporting their goods. They were selling. They were marketing. They were going to arms shows in Malaysia, Indonesia, Abu Dhabi, and of course, Iran was a very eager customer, as was North Korea. Finally, in 2000. What happened is that the then CIA Director George Tenet sat down with Prime Minister Musharraf at the presidential suite in the Waldorf Hotel and showed him photographs and said, "We know what you're up to. Stop it." And Musharraf later said that it was the most embarrassing moment in his life. But they denied it. They absolutely denied it. But Musharraf pointed the finger quietly at Khan, and he was gently relieved of his command. But it didn't stop him from what he was doing. In fact, he was big time into buying luxury homes, apartments, cars, everything. And he offered Libya a turnkey nuclear operation for $100 million, which was really a bargain. It was a real bargain. Let me just talk to you briefly, because I know our time is short. is on the CIA aspect of this. I would say the CIA's covert action really kicked into gear in the late 90s into 2000. And it employed all the spy stuff that you might imagine, whether it's disguises, passports, surreptitious entries. It was huge, and we were getting enormous amounts of information. Finally, in October of 2003, the British and the Americans decided they had enough, and they intercepted a ship called the BBC China that had gone from Malaysia to Dubai. It was on its way to Libya with 5, maybe 6 crates of centrifuges, and it was intercepted and stopped. And Libya was caught red-handed. And the Libyans, unlike others, started singing like a bird. They told us a lot of what we needed to know about Khan. I had a former colleague who's, this is true, his nickname was Mad Dog. He recruited one of Khan's partners through classic recruitment. Chatted him up in a bar in Dubai, said, you know, I know about your tax problems in Switzerland, and I know about your child custody problems, and so this Urs Tinner, an engineer, was very, very helpful in bringing down the network. I was speaking to Eric about this a little bit beforehand. Many say that the CIA waited simply too long. We knew about this back in 1995. The CIA is addicted to information. And there is something to be said about, you know, if we're going to shut this down, we want to make sure we want to get all the nodes. But it went on probably longer than it should have, because there was a lot of nuclear material that went unaccounted for. We still don't know where it is. So we were also involved in doing some covert action on the material that was going to the Iranians or North Koreans or others, which is where you give them what they want, but it doesn't exactly work like it's advertised. And I'll leave it at
the cinnamon in the recipe or something, right? So
it's something like that. So I'll just finish by saying, even though that's an old story, the fact is it's a template for the future. This, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to know that there's still threads of the Khan network around the world.
Fun stuff. Okay, before you go, and we have to move on, but I'm going to get back to this, but we both love the show The Americans, as do, I assume, some people out here. I'm completely obsessed, and I have a girlfriend who's Russian, and now she's got to teach me how to speak Russian. That's just it. But so very quickly, you once told me that if you were training agents today, that you would train them to have to function like the spies in The Americans in the 80s, pre-cell phone, pre-GPS, etc.
So we were talking about this, and since the election, I've been watching a lot more TV and
entertainment TV. Right?
And so I got hooked on The Americans. I just finished season 4, and now I have to pay $2.99 an episode for season 4. But what got me? So if I were chief of station overseas right now, I would be talking to my team about this sort of old school espionage, which is what you're seeing, the early 1980s. No cell phones, no computers, because we know how they wreak havoc, of course. They are using really old school ways of communicating, dead drops. I mean, you know, everyone has a phone in this room. You know that it really is a transmitter, and it can do a lot of harm. That's why they don't allow phones for many of the writers in the audience. You know, you're not allowed to take your cell phones into any secure areas, into the station or whatnot. So it's kind of what's old is new again.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Valerie.